McIntyre, Dean of the College of Education, and welcome to Coffee and Conversation. Today I'm here with Dr. Joanna Goode, Sommerville Knight Professor in the Department of Education Studies and also Department Head of the Department of Education Studies. So Joanna, how did you develop your interest in computer science, and why is computer science education so important to today's youth?
As an undergraduate student, I was one of the very few women in my computer science classes, and I noticed some pretty stark gender and racial disparities about who was participating in those classes and who the curriculum was oriented towards. These disparities became more prevalent to me as I began teaching high school in Southern California. I taught at a very diverse high school, and yet my computer science class did not reflect that diversity. Another part that really activated my interest in this field was when I began doing education research in this area. And I was part of a research team along with Dr. Jane Margolis. And we did research that led to the book Stuck in the Shallow End, Education, Race, and Computing. We discovered some disparities that led to these inequities. One was that courses that were rigorous and high level and somewhat engaging were really only being offered at affluent schools in white, wealthier areas of the region. And schools serving primarily African American students and Latino students were not having those courses being offered at their schools. And further, we saw that when courses were being offered at the schools, at these few schools, long-standing stereotypes and structural inequities were preventing students from being funneled in and welcomed into these courses. This really led us to think that computer science education needed to be reimagined in order to be democratized, to be welcoming, to be engaging for students. And that led to my development along with my colleagues of the Exploring Computer Science course.
That's really powerful, Joanna. You came into the field, you recognized that you were underrepresented as a woman in undergraduate studies, and then you also realized that it wasn't just your undergraduate experience, it actually scaled back to high schools and high school students' experience. So how did we get girls and ethnic and racially underrepresented or minoritized students interested in the field?
I think one of the goals of Exploring Computer Science is really to intentionally design learning experiences and teacher pedagogy that supports those learning experiences to do the inclusive and accessible approaches to learning in computer science. So it's not a chilly learning environment. One of the ways that Exploring Computer Science does that is emphasizing creativity, emphasizing problem solving, bringing in cultural relevance and cultural responsiveness. And so our curriculum takes a lot of hands-on projects. And one of the examples that has been particularly compelling for our students is dealing with electronic textiles. So after students progress through some of the introductory units, they're actually sewing and doing circuitry and doing crafting along with coding to make interactive textiles. These are ugly dolls or hoodies that light up, and really showing that this knowledge that they have is not just about efficiency or about jobs of the future, but also about self-expression and agency and participation. And we think those hooks are things that students desperately want to be engaged with in their schools.
So exploring computer science is a place for creativity, and it's a place for exploring oneself within the bounds of technology. I've got to ask you a question about artificial intelligence because it's a topic that everyone is talking about. What are your thoughts about artificial intelligence?
Yes, this is certainly a hot topic, Laura Lee, and one that has been part of computer science for a really long time. The Exploring Computer Science curriculum has always had artificial intelligence as part of it, starting from the very beginning in terms of conceptual knowledge. So the Turing test is where we send two students outside of the classroom, and one pretends to be the computer. We can see them maybe using a ChatGPT now, and the other one is a teenager. and we say, hey, computer, pretend to be a 15-year-old from Eugene, and the class can ask questions, and then the people come back and figuring out who is the computer and who is the person. These sorts of conversations come up in the curriculum early. Ultimately, we're hoping that Exploring Computer Science presents AI in a way that does not just have students positioned as users or victims or on this side of AI, but creates opportunities for them to think, if I'm developing an AI for my community, what could it do?
I've been talking to Dr. Joanna Goode in Coffee and Conversations. Thanks for tuning in.